Hey everybody, it's Christina Holloway, and today we're going to talk about underperforming employees or underperforming team members and how you can manage expectations when you have to deal with someone who cannot pull their own weight. So in this video, we're going to talk about a simple framework that helps you decide when to take action in order to correct a situation that's starting to spiral out of control. So for example, I was talking to a client yesterday, and she was telling me that for months, she's been dealing with someone who just isn't pulling their own weight. And she has a really great high performance team. She's hired all of these people herself, but she has this one person who's an issue. He believes that there's one responsibility that he just cannot do, which really means he just doesn't want to do. There isn't a responsibility that you're not capable of doing when you have a job. And if there's anything that you just don't understand, there are tools, information, materials that you can read to learn how to do this particular skill set that potentially you just don't understand. And you can also work alongside someone who can explain it to you. So to walk around saying, I'm sorry, I just don't know how to do this, therefore I'm not going to do it, is a little bit of a person being difficult and an underperformer. So in this example, my client had mentioned everybody is required to complete this one responsibility. Everyone is responsible for following the procedure that's outlined on how to do this particular thing. Whenever he's responsible for doing it, he just screws it up. And then he'll walk around saying, I guess this isn't a skill that I have and I shouldn't be responsible for this thing, when everybody is supposed to do it. Now, where I used to work, we had the same problem. Everyone was responsible for doing their own budget. Everyone was responsible for reporting back how much money they needed and how much they were going to spend in a quarter. And we had one manager who repeatedly would screw it up, and then every quarter would say, I guess I'm just not good at it. Maybe you should give it to someone else, which wasn't true. There is a point where you have a job and all of the responsibilities are included in that job. If you just can't do one or two elements of that job, it means you're not suited for that job. It doesn't mean we get to tailor the job to your skills and ignore the part that you can't finish because you just choose not to. Now, I am being a little harsh and being a little demanding, but there is a point. There are boundaries here. If you're in charge, like we were, we had a team and we were in charge of these managers, and we went back and told them eventually, every other manager in your space is able to do this job. If you just can't do this one element, that you are not well suited for this position, and we'll find something else for you. And usually the indicator was, you clearly can't perform at a management level. You'll need to be reassigned back one. And that usually set the tone and explained, you're not going to get away with this. Now, this is passive-aggressive behavior. This is not being direct, and there's a little bit of gaslighting in, you didn't explain it to me properly. Anything like that that says, I'm not going to be responsible for the fact that I screwed this up when everybody around me knows how to do it, and so do I. I just choose not to. All right, so I've set the stage for exactly the kind of person you're dealing with. Now, for my client, what happened is this blew up and became huge. This person who has a senior level position ended up not following through all the details on the procedure and then dropped the ball. And then this became a bigger issue that went all the way up the chain of command. People started asking, how could a senior level person like this screw this up so badly? At which point she had to go back and say, I've had so many problems with this guy, I really don't know how to deal with him. And she explained to me how she was going to talk to him. She was super kind. She was really nice. She was willing to listen to his point of view. And she gave a lot of area for him to come to terms with answering or taking accountability for what went wrong. I'm sure you didn't mean for this to be screwed up. I'm sure you have a really plausible answer for it. Now, she actually asked me, how am I going to deal with this? And my first answer was, my God, put him on a performance review and make sure he gets the message that he has a job and he has a responsibility. And if he can't do it, there are plenty of people lined up who would love to have his job. Now, while that's something that I'd love to say, that isn't always feasible when you work at a large company, or even if you work at a small company where there's too many layers of people saying, just give him one more chance, just give him one more chance. So her first approach was, let me see if I can find a way for him to just tell me, oh yeah, we just screwed up, or I'll take accountability for it. That's not going to happen. He's not going to take accountability for it, and he's going to blame somebody else, and he's going to say, this wasn't my fault. I never wanted to do it in the first place. In which case, here's the framework. The first question is, when a person is this frustrating, question number one, what do you want? Always, when we're trying to deal with a person, we can either keep throwing solutions at him and he'll keep evading these solutions because he just doesn't want to do this particular assignment. Or you can directly walk right up to him and say, this is not working. What do you want? Which means, what are your expectations? Where do you feel like you've been working too small? Where would you like to go into your strengths? Where do you feel like we're not giving you assignments that you'd rather be doing? Now, you may think, oh, we're just catering to what the guy really wants. But in reality, you are trying to find a solution. You want to find out where he feels he's going to do his best work. And then you want to move him out and move him out of that space and move him into a space where he feels like he's going to do better work and have fewer requirements demanded upon him. Now, this is how we save people if we're trying to find a good place for them to go inside a company. But if they become really problematic, you absolutely are trying to find a way for them to either get moved out, go on a performance review, or end up getting funneled right out of the business. Many companies prefer not to fire people who are bad performers. They try to rehabilitate them. Why? It costs less money to train somebody who's already hired than it is to keep firing them and hire more people who need more training. It's just the way it is. So it's going to really depend on the size of the company, the HR policies around it, and what the leadership team is willing to allow. At the company where I was, the management team, this guy was a really terrible manager, but all we did was redefine his job, keep the scope extremely limited, and make sure he did very little damage. He was never fired. He was never fired. And equally for this person, this guy is not really going to get fired. He's just barely showing up doing basic work. What we do know is we're on the tail end of a pandemic that's lasted another year, and we have a lot of issues with people who are frustrated. They're emotionally overwhelmed. They're not sure where the new normal is going to come in, and so they could be problematic at work. We want to give them a fair chance of trying to recuperate or feel better in their space. But if things get that blown up, the first thing you're asking is, where do you feel you need answers? So they're going to give you the solution. They're going to tell you their solution. And the second space in the framework is to tell them, since this is your solution, and since you're not able to do this responsibility, I'm now going to limit the scope of your involvement in that space, and I'm going to pivot you into a new position or a new definition of your job. And you can give them a lateral transfer, or you can just change the scope of their job so that they're no longer impacting the productivity or the bottom line or the actual reputation of the business, because that's what happened here. This person actually impacted the reputation of the business. Now, the third thing, so you're asking, what do you want? The second part is you're redefining their position. And the third part is you are going to start creating accountability in their performance reviews. It looks like you weren't able to do this job. It looks like you weren't able to fulfill these basic responsibilities. We've now created a new definition of your position or moved you into a new space. If you cannot perform in that new space, then our last resort is to create a performance plan for you, because it doesn't appear that you're able to accomplish much in your area. We don't have room to give you any promotions or to acknowledge or put you bumped up into any kind of career development. So we are going to have to create some sort of plan to help rehabilitate you into a new space. For my client, what she did was she moved him out of a space of strategic decision-making and into a space of developing skills. And then the third part, which is, if he really can't perform even in this space, which they felt suited his strengths, then they were going to put him on a performance review. So it's still pending. But with our own manager, we did limit his scope, and he had no path forward. He stayed in a management position for years until he decided it was time for him to leave and go into another company, because he limited his growth and his career development. But once it starts, a toxic relationship or a toxic employee who just doesn't want to perform and just doesn't want to do the job, and they decided, I'm going to only do the things that I like doing and everybody else can carry the weight of the rest of the responsibilities, especially in a team environment, they've already hindered their own career development. They don't belong at that company. A company can just reduce the amount of impact they have until they're ready to move on. Now, of course, the advice I'm giving is when you're working at a large company and you feel like every time you have this person on your team, they hinder progress, limit the amount of damage they can do. If you're in a decision to hire and fire, put them on a performance plan and then start the process of getting them off your team or out of your company. A person who decides, I'm going to do things the way I want to do things, even if it hinders the development or the productivity of the team around me, is not someone that you want on your team. The bigger issue here was how many times people had to work overtime to correct his mistakes, and he didn't see any problem with that. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And please leave a comment and let me know if you've had any kind of experience like this and how it played out. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.